belief that we can literally support ourselves. It's such a ridiculous concept that we can't support ourselves.
So do you think, just to come in there, do you think independence would be a solution for this? And if you do, then why?
It's the only solution, because on a local level and on a global level, we have to shift our patterns of consumption. We have to shift our psyche about how we interact with the world. But particularly in Scotland, there's only one route for me. I don't understand how you can't keep working harder for less money and gleaning the resources and making the decisions down south and have the south creaming all our benefit off the top. We have to get into a psyche of doing things for ourselves, using what huge natural resources we do have, and using our own intelligence and integrity, and just sort of like rousing the troops, rousing the enthusiasm. I think the thing that's really lacking in our culture is enthusiasm. It's starting to grow now, and it's really exciting seeing the independence campaign, that people are sort of getting excited about being Scottish and feeling much more proud of it. I know as a child in the 70s and 80s, it was a bit embarrassing being Scottish. It didn't feel like something that, my accent felt something that was a wee bit stupid or just didn't sound right or something.
Well, this has been quite a common cultural phenomenon for years. I mean, it came up with The Hobbit recently, the film. I've still not seen it, but apparently, like some of the villains given Scottish accents. And I actually had an old Lord of the Rings radio play from the BBC from 50 years ago. And like what they had done was all of the bad people were Scottish, all of the heroes were aristocratic English, and Gollum was Welsh.
Yeah,
there's a lot of this.
No, I actually saw it dubbed into Italian recently, so I'm afraid I missed out on all of that. But I was discussing recently how the villains are often Cockneys and people from London, and it epitomises a certain cultural character. But yeah, no, I'd never heard of that people were Scottish.
That kind of thing ties in what you're saying about how that kind of it's an induced inferiority complex in some ways.
Yeah, and I did find it when I spoke out. I put my essay. It was on the Bella Caledonia site, the Lilliput Nation article I wrote. And it was originally intended just to get something off my chest, like get something off my mind. In the middle of the night, I got up and I was having these nagging feelings of like, I really feel like I just can't say this stuff, and it had to come out. So I put it out, and then it ended up going around the internet a bit, and it had a really strong reaction from I'm not going to say an English friend, because he's just a guy that I know, and maybe he's not even born in England. I don't know. He's got an English accent. I don't know. But he really reacted in the most aggressive and sort of like really derogatory way, like telling me that I should essentially like get that off the internet. You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't be doing that. And I felt like I was being talked to by a teacher at school or something, telling me that I'm naughty for doing something bad. And it's just that assumed stance of superiority that he was telling me.
What was his particular objection?
Well, he said that I was being racist, basically saying that the English, something about the English. I said I was talking about the English being very arrogant in certain situations, the English arrogance, the dialogue that's opening up just now for Scottish independence. It's very interesting that a lot of it is extremely vibrant, intelligent, pertinent, to the point, extremely eloquent. And a lot of the old school arguments that are coming from English and Scottish together, they're just so blooming arrogant, and they're so presumptuous, and they're not even attending to the argument. They're attending to, you should just shut up because you're just being stupid. And that's not an argument, frankly, but that seems to be used a lot. It's not happening so much now. I think folk are realising that, oh shit, we've got something to deal with here.
I think this will get a lot worse in the event of a no vote.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah, I think that Scotland is waking up, and at the end of the day, once you're waking up, you're not going to go back to sleep again. So they're going to have to deal with it. But I did say that in my reaction to his reaction, this man's reaction to my article, that, what are you saying? Are you saying I should not speak out? I should not express my views? I wasn't talking against English people. I was saying certain English people express a huge amount of arrogance and use their arrogance to sort of suppress people like me. I'm just speaking my truth. I'm speaking what I've grown up with, my experience. I could be a damn sight ruder about it. Frankly, growing up on an island where a lot of the properties and the businesses were owned by people who've moved up from down south and basically control the economic situation. And in the meantime, no opportunities for young people. There's no way I was ever going to have a house of my own where I grew up, and there's no opportunity to stay on the island. And yeah, I do have some, not resentment about that, but I do have some indignation about it that, well, actually, that has really affected my lifestyle. And
this is kind of back to the colonisers and settlers argument that kicked off with Alistair Gray last week and everything. I don't know if you saw about that.
I heard about it, yeah, and it's a strong term to use, colonisation, but at the end of the day, I've had a discussion with an English friend about this, that, that happens everywhere. It happens in rural England, it happens in the north of England. But I think it's particular to Scotland and England. People move up from England. It's an economic migration, and it's natural that you might think, well, I could have a much easier life in Scotland, so I'll sell my house here and I'll buy a big business up there, type of thing. That was a possibility. I don't know what the state of things now, but, and people can get, it's less university fees or free university fees. I don't know what the state of things are just now, but certainly when I was at art school, it was easier. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss about that.
We'll leave it there on that one because it's been discussed a lot everywhere else. So
it's very interesting though to see how people, like, contemporary perceptions of a deeply, it's a potent phrase, that the whole colonisation issue, and I do think it needs talked out. It's like every other area of this. Things need to be talked out, and everybody needs to get their opinions. We need to have dialogue, extensive dialogue about all of these things.
And in the same article, in the Lilliput Nation article, you talked about your reasons for living away and maybe going back. Like, how do you feel? Do you miss Scotland? And what's the general thing about living away as well?
Yeah, I miss Scotland immensely. I really do. And I miss the culture and the language, and I miss what's going on just now. I mean, I would really like to be at the heart of what's going on just now and really contributing to it. But I have to look at finding a balance in my life. And when I'm in Scotland, to do what I want to be and be as creative and happy as I am here, and to live as comfortably as I am here in Italy, I can't do that in Scotland. I can't be as liberated. I have to say, it's to do with, like, liberation, and to do with my voice and what I want to do in the world. It feels like there's just too much tightness and controlledness in Scotland. And also, I've got a really strong, vibrant energy. I've got a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of positivity, and I don't feel that there's always an easy way to find a place for that in Scotland. I find that after a certain point, I can stay in Scotland for a certain amount of time, and then after a point, I just sort of get dragged into that doer mentality of, well, it's awful difficult and blah, blah, blah. And I just, that's not my life philosophy at all. I always thinking, like, let's do it and let's go on and let's see what we can do with very little resources. And let's see, if we just do this, this and this, then maybe we can create something out of nothing. So I struggle to subsist in Scotland. And I find too that the property situation is impossible. I'm here. I moved to Italy because I bought a house here for €10,000, which is, I think in the end, it was about £8,600 altogether, including...
and that won't even cover your deposit for something in Scotland.
Yeah, there's no way I could ever buy a house in Scotland, ever. It's just no way. I did consider it. I got left some money by my mum when she passed away, and it would have been just enough to buy my high-rise council flat, but then I would have been tied to paying massive service fees for every time the lift gets broken or so on, or vandalised. So it just would never be an option. I could never live in a state in Scotland where I would be free to think and feel. I would have to hugely commercialise my practice, and my artwork for me is more, it's a spiritual practice really. It's not something I can compromise. I can't just make a load of prints or make a load of nice things to sell, like, cheaply. I do merchandise my work in some ways, but there's just no way I could pursue my artistic path and earn enough money to heat a house, have a roof over my head or so on. I've tried very many different ways, and the last place I lived, I was way up a glen on a private estate paying rent to a landlord and chopping my own wood, but I can't keep up with it. I've not got the resources to keep up with that kind of a pace of life. Whereas here, the sun does free a lot of things up. It does free up a lot of time and energy, much less wood chopping in Italy.
So how could independence change that kind of problem with Scotland, or would it?
I would imagine that my strongest point that I made in my Lilliput Nation article was that the resources that we have in Scotland we're not using, and that the majority of the resources I'm thinking that are going to change Scotland for the better are internal resources, like literally our energy, enthusiasm and intelligence. Those are the things that not just now necessarily, things are waking up just now, but through the benefit system, through council housing and ghettoisation of people, we have a huge undermined resource. I don't know if that's the right word, undermined as in we are being undermined because our mentalities, we're being told that we can't do stuff, and disempowered, but also undermined, like it's undervalued. It's a resource that could be mined, sort of thing. I think that if we got the enthusiasm of people who are just completely disenfranchised on every level, I think that one of the problems for all of us in the world right now is that we need to shift our focus individually. We need to shift the focus from profit and being in competition with each other to working cooperatively and living with enough. Like instead of taking so much and taking from other people, we need to look at how can we share resources and work with each other. And I think that we do a lot of that already in Scotland. I think we've done some really extraordinary community projects, and we've got extraordinary technologies and extraordinary intermediate technologies in Scotland, and we're really pushing ahead in a lot of areas too, especially marrying rural culture and technologies right now. There's a lot more possibilities than there were, for example, in the early 70s when my parents left the city and moved to the island, and and we're really shocked at wintering on a Scottish island, bringing up 3 wee kids and trying to earn a living. But I think that there's just a lot more possibilities in our day and age. So I don't know. I don't know whether we are going to infuse everybody and get everyone's enthusiasm on board. And I don't know how you ever transform on a big level, take a disenfranchised or disenthusiastic population and make them enthusiastic. It's like things do, when you have a critical mass, you do radiate, like that radiates outward in a really powerful way. Yeah, and as that grows, it radiates. It's like the 12 Monkeys theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's also the collective identity is important. Like one of the ways that that's suppressed is divide and rule. So like you can say Scotland altogether, but then people, the negativity that's constantly foisted creates a problem. But also there's the idea of but then it's Scotland Catholic, Scotland Protestant, then it's East and West, then it's Glasgow, Edinburgh, then it's North and South, and then it's Highlands and Lowlands. This also can create a kind of stasis that's not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, and there's similar things have gone on. I mean, Italy still has a huge divide between North and South, and they were only really united, was 150 years ago. It's still a country that's made up of parts. And that is an issue unless the parts are all functioning well together and unless the North and South have a good relationship. And
it's been quite clear for a long time that the parts of the United Kingdom are not functioning well together.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my feeling. But I do think that there's a lot... I sense intuitively, like my sort of sense in my heart is that there is a stronger national identity now and birthing and growing and sort of starting to bloom. It's like the bud's there. There's a bud and it wants to sort of open into a big dramatic flower, but it's just sort of there's so much that part of it needs to be argued out. That's the thing that I was saying in my article too, is that there's so much that you start speaking and somebody blooming well boos you down and tells you to poo-poos you or tells you to wheesht, and that's, I would never have even thought to have a series of questions in my mind when I was a child or when I was a teenager. I always felt pretty angry about my situation and what was going on in my village and my island and not having any opportunities, and why was that, and how come all these other people have got all the houses and so on. But I never really thought I just had a sort of chip on the shoulder and like, bloody English people, so on, in my village. And it's taken me a long time to realise that there is an argument there, but just recently it seems to have like boom, like it's really started to explode, and I think that we're in that phase of it exploding and expanding very rapidly. And we need to sort of work from here. We need to work from where we are rather than thinking, right, we need to get to independence. We need to be there immediately and we need to do this and that. I think we have to really look at the different phases of it, because 10 years ago, there wasn't this argument in Scotland. 10 years ago, we started getting the parliament, and it needs to work in certain phases. I don't think it can't be rushed. And certainly it can't be dictated by London. London can't decide that, when will it happen. And if they say yes or no. It's like it's a natural progression. We will have independence eventually in whatever form and whatever stages it comes in. Scotland will have its own identity and its own culture again. It will have a much stronger culture and a much stronger economy, much stronger ecology. But I don't know what the timescale of that is. I think we'll be surprised by it either way. I think it'll probably be faster than we thought it would happen.
Another project you've been involved in is the National Collective. Would you like to explain about that? Do you think that's quite a positive thing?
I think it's an amazing thing. It's beautiful. As an artist in Scotland, I've always felt that we're very marginalised, like we're the lowest paid of the lowest paid sector type of thing. I was involved in the art